But in the Global North, as I said, we developed a methodology for cities to use in implementing the Earth Charter principles, and that was the EarthCAT program, which stands for the Earth Charter Community Action Tool. I didn't invent that name, but the committee that was formed to put the methodology together, which was convened by Stephen Rockefeller, felt it was important. And so there was this large committee that included Hazel Henderson and representatives of cities around the world to develop this methodology. And the World Resources Institute was involved because they were interested in documenting the indicators toward the city's goals as they worked on these plans. And the first city to take advantage of the project was the city of Calgary, Alberta, up in the Global North. They found the methodology partly because I had also written another book called The Key to Sustainable Cities that they had gotten their hands on, and they wanted to know how better to do the work. In that book, I talked a lot about Burlington's experience. As I mentioned before, I had done this big sustainability planning project in Burlington, and so that was the basis for that book. I'm trying to think now. So the city of Calgary decided to move forward with the 100-year plan for the city, and they wanted to use EarthCAT as the methodology to do it. Before they did, though, they convened a group of academics to basically kick the tires on the methodology and make sure that they felt it was robust enough to do the work. Now, it was about 2006 that the city of Calgary brought that plan to the World Urban Forum that was held in Vancouver that year, and they won an award for a city plan at the World Urban Forum because it was so comprehensive and had gotten so many people involved. I think at that time, the number of people that were involved in Calgary was one of the greatest public outreach efforts in history that we know of. Even in New York City after the bombing, they did do a big community outreach project there to try and decide what to do with the site. But even there, it was about 5,000 people involved. So this was even bigger than that. It did take effort, and it took money and time. But if you use advertising, especially direct mail advertising statistics, the fact that a city of 1 million people had 20,000 people involved, the statistics are if you do a direct mailing to, say, 100 people, 2% will respond. So we actually feel that we probably gave every citizen in Calgary the opportunity to be involved in one way or another to come up with 20,000 people ending up being involved. Now, at the same time, another city on the east coast of the United States, the city of Newburgh, also had heard about the methodology because they had come to a conference I organized in 2004 in Burlington on sustainable communities. And so they engaged in an Earth Charter planning process as well, using the EarthCAT methodology. Now, between the city of Calgary and the city of Newburgh, you really had the best of times and the worst of times. I mean, the city of Calgary was an incredibly wealthy city with millions of dollars to spend on this planning process. The city of Newburgh is one of the more impoverished cities in the Hudson Valley. And they didn't have that much money to spend, but they had a new city manager who really wanted to do a long-term sustainability plan for the city. So they engaged us to come in, and we worked with their citizens also to do a big public engagement process and do a master plan for the city that was 30 years long, not 100, but 30. And that was interesting because we had to really work in a different way to engage the community because there had been so many racial tensions there, and there were gang violence, and it was tough to work there. So I developed this system of what I called this concentric circle means of getting people involved, where we identified opinion leaders in various ethnic groups in the city and social groups in the city to actually help us recruit people to get training to be a stakeholder and to then recruit more people. So we did a series of stakeholder trainings using that method. And at every stakeholder training, we'd ask the group that we had assembled, who's missing, who's not here. And then we take their names and invite them to the next one. We take their names and invite them to the next one. So by the end of the training period, we had trained hundreds of people in the city of Newburgh in things like how to think in systems and how to manage conflict and how to behave at meetings and how, to be good stakeholders, essentially. And there was one moment that I'm particularly proud of in that process where the city manager said, this project has changed the political dynamic in this community. People became more respectful, they were better at listening to each other instead of the take no prisoners politics that had governed them up until then. And as far as I know, the plan has been implemented fairly successfully. And they've seen some good economic development projects that have gone in. There's been a lot more engagement of the community and local government over time. Still got a lot of problems, Calgary, for sure. I mean, not Calgary, but Newburgh, but I think the plan did a lot of good. So all of those three things were really going on simultaneously. If you think about it, there was Calgary, there was Newburgh, and then there was this development project, essentially, in South Africa, in Diepsloot. Now, in Diepsloot, that project grew into another set of trainings around South Africa after an election there where they brought us in to do a series of trainings all over the country on both EarthCAT and local economic development practices that they could use in their cities and towns. So it was all the newly elected and appointed local government officials, and I think I did a total of 6 different trainings all over the country. I was there for like a month and a half, just going from training to training and meeting all their local government officials and training them in the methodology. So that sort of describes Calgary, Newburgh, and South Africa. At that moment in time, my son was going into high school. I was frankly getting tired of traveling all the time for work. And in my own town of Montpelier, the position of Planning and Community Development Director opened up. And I'd been watching my local politics for a while. It was kind of a mess. There were some issues that had come up that they hadn't dealt with very well. And I thought, well, maybe I could help. So I applied for the job in Montpelier of the director of the planning department and got it. They needed a new master plan. It was actually right in the moment when the city was supposed to start the master planning process again. And so I got them interested in using EarthCAT to do that. They had been one of the cities and towns a couple years earlier that had endorsed the Earth Charter. So using the Earth Charter Community Action Tool to do their master plan was a perfect fit. They didn't actually know, I think when they hired me, that I was the person behind that campaign, because the way I did the campaign was to get local organizers to do the work, because it's a lot to get a city or a town to endorse something on town meeting floor. You have to take up a petition that has at least 5% of the registered voters' signatures on it. You've got to be there at town meeting to speak in favor of it. So I used local organizers to do that. I didn't do it all myself. I couldn't possibly. But so they took EarthCAT and then they prepared a 100-year plan for the city as well. With my assistance, I was their planning director at that point. And we got, again, a huge stakeholder group involved in the city, which is really important. The fact that the public gets involved in long-term planning for the city, I can't emphasize how important it is. In each case, Calgary, Newburgh, and Montpelier, things happened after the plan was adopted that tested it almost immediately. In Calgary, there was a new development proposed in the edge of the city that normally under the old business as usual approach would have been approved. But it didn't actually fit with the principles and the practices that were in the new master plan for the city, the new 100-year plan for the city. And the stakeholders didn't like it one bit. They showed up at the city council and demanded that they turn it down, and they did. In Newburgh, a similar thing happened where something was proposed that was clearly off the rails. I don't remember. It had something to do with a courthouse that was being developed by the county, and it was taking over a facility that the citizens of the town really wanted. I don't remember the details, but because they had been involved in the stakeholder process and had a voice in the plan, they showed up in force to stop the city from doing that project. And similarly in Montpelier, after I left the city, the new mayor didn't want to have that master plan in place anymore. He didn't agree with it. He was much more conservative than the mayor I had worked with to prepare the plan. And the stakeholders got involved, and the plan is still in place to this day, even in the face of a 2- or 3-term mayor that didn't want it to continue. So that feature of master planning that EarthCAT helps develop, and is very clear in the Earth Charter principles about people having a voice in the things that affect their own lives and their city lives, is critically important. And I think it's something that EarthCAT and the Earth Charter can be proud of.